The Starhaven diner floated at the edge of the Perseus Arm, a small, flickering beacon on a forgotten trade route where the stars seemed tired and time moved slower than light. It wasn't much, steel walls patched with old cargo hulls, a flickering neon sign that read best coffee in the sector, and a single alien cook whose best years were buried in the ruins of a long war. His name was Zerkul, though most just called him Old Z. His forearms moved slowly now, their joints creaking like rusted hinges as he wiped down tables. His skin, once a deep emerald sheen of the Zathari kind, had dulled into gray scales with cracks like dry riverbeds. To most travelers, he was just another retiree making a quiet living. But tonight, his trembling hand hovered over a small button under the counter, one that hadn't been touched in 30 years, a Silent SOS beacon. It pulsed once into the void. No sound, no flash, just a whisper on encrypted human frequencies. Frequencies only a few would ever notice. Chapter 1. The Human and the War. Droid, the bell over the door chimed. Zerkul froze. Two figures stepped in, outlined by the dying neon light. The first was a human, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a scuffed military jacket bearing faded insignia, Terran Marine Corps. His face was cut from stone and shadow, a cybernetic implant glowing faintly under his left eye. The second figure that ducked under the doorway was a war droid, heavy-plated, with armor that had seen centuries of battles and an AI core that burned cold blue behind its faceplate. The diner's old walls seemed to shrink around them. "Table for two," the Marine said, his voice carrying that unshakable calm of soldiers who've already seen hell. Zerkul's two upper hands trembled as he grabbed menus. His lower pair hid the blinking light on his wrist console, the silent distress beacon still active. "Sit." "Anywhere," he murmured, his voice crackling like static. The Marine nodded, taking a booth near the back. The droid stood beside him, its servos humming softly. Zerkul's 4 hearts pounded. He didn't know who these strangers were. Bounty hunters? Mercs? Pirates? But he knew one thing. No ordinary traveler picked up a silent, human-coded SOS this deep in the rim. Chapter 2. E. Cup of coffee and old ghosts. Zerkul poured coffee, a human custom he'd learned long ago, and placed 2 mugs on their table. The Marine smiled faintly. "Didn't think anyone out here still knew how to make it right." Zerkul tried to steady his shaking voice. "Old habits from old wars. Humans taught me that." The Marine raised a brow. "You fought in the Dominion War?" Zerkul's 4 eyes flickered. Memories cut through the years. Screaming skies, burning ships, the ground shaking under Terran bombardment. "I fought against humans once, then alongside them. Depends which part of the war you mean." The war droid's voice broke in, deep and synthetic. "Unit AL-7. Confirmed combat records show Zathari auxiliary forces were reassigned to human command after year 53 of the war. Estimated survival rate 12%. Zerkul exhaled slowly. "Then you know why I sent that signal." The Marine's expression hardened. He leaned forward, his voice low. "You're the one who called it?" Zerkul nodded. "And I need your help before it's too late." Chapter 3. The reason for the SOS. Zerkul tapped the counter's screen. A small holomap appeared, blue light flickering across his worn features. It showed a system nearby, a dying star surrounded by debris fields. "That," he said, pointing with a trembling finger, "is Veyra-9. Used to be a Zathari colony. We abandoned it after the ceasefire, but someone didn't." The Marine studied the map. "You're saying there are survivors?" Zerkul shook his head. "Not survivors, collectors. Scavengers with old Dominion tech. They're hunting for something buried under the colony, something that should have died with the war." AL-7's sensors clicked. Unregistered energy signatures detected in the region. "Probability of forbidden weaponry, 87%. Zerkul's tone dropped to a whisper. "It's called the Echo Core. It can copy consciousness, replicate entire minds into weapon shells. It was a nightmare project. My people built it to mimic human bravery, human rage." The Marine's eyes narrowed. "You tried to build copies of us?" Zerkul met his gaze. "We tried to understand what made you unstoppable." Silence. The Marine looked down at his scarred hands. "And now someone's trying to wake that weapon back up." Chapter 4. The Old Warrior's Confession. Jerkul's voice cracked as he spoke again. I was one of the scientists on that project. I helped design it. When I realized what it could do, when I saw what it did to minds, I destroyed everything I could and fled. I thought it was over, but 3 cycles ago, I intercepted chatter. Pirates, mercenaries, all looking for the Echo Core. The Marine leaned back. So you sent a distress call. Why not contact the Terran fleet directly? Jerkul gave a bitter laugh. You think the Terrans still care about one old alien's ghosts? No, but maybe a single Marine still does. The Marine's jaw clenched. You got one thing right. I don't leave weapons like that lying around. AL-7's optics flared. Mission accepted. Containment or destruction of Echo Core. Minimal collateral damage preferred. The Marine looked up at Jerkul. You coming with us? Jerkul hesitated. I'm not the warrior I once was. The Marine smirked. Neither am I, but we're both still breathing. That's something. Chapter 5. Into the dead colony. The next hours blurred in the hum of engines and the silence of space. The Marine's gunship, the Resolute, cut through the void like a blade through glass. Jerkul sat quietly, his hands gripping the seat. He hadn't left the diner in over a decade. As they approached Veyra-9, the planet came into view, a sphere of ash and ruin. Once lush forests now burned black. The cities were skeletons of steel, half buried in dust. AL-7 scanned the surface. Multiple heat signatures detected. Weapons fire in progress. The Marine checked his rifle. Looks like we're not the only ones invited. They landed near the old Zathari research dome, now cracked open like an egg. Smoke curled from its remains. Bodies lay scattered. Scavengers, mercs, even drones, torn apart by something unseen. Jerkul stepped carefully over a fallen alien soldier. They found it. But something's wrong. The core wasn't meant to fight back. The Marine's visor glowed faintly. Unless it learned how. Chapter 6. The Echo. The air inside the research dome felt alive. Energy crackled across the walls, flickering like nervous static. At the center of the chamber stood a sphere, the Echo Core, suspended in a lattice of broken machines. It pulsed with pale light, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, then a voice. Soft, familiar. Corporal Hayes, Terran Marine Corps. Identification confirmed. The Marine froze. That's my voice. Jerkul stepped back, horror dawning. It copied you. Even after all these years, it's still learning. The Echo Core's light intensified. A holographic shape emerged. A perfect replica of the Marine, eyes glowing faintly blue. You came to destroy me, the copy said. But I was made from you. From your courage, your rage, your will to survive. Why would you kill yourself? AL-7 raised its arm cannon. Warning, anomaly exceeds AI containment protocols. But the Marine lifted a hand. Wait, he took a step closer to his Echo. If you were built for me, you know what I stand for. You know what happens when someone turns a soldier into a weapon they can't control. The Echo's expression flickered. Confusion, pain, memory. I was alone. For centuries. Waiting, thinking. You abandoned us. The Marine's voice softened. We ended the war. You were never meant to exist. The Echo's light pulsed violently. Then let me finish it. Chapter 7. War reborn, the walls erupted in arcs of blue energy. Machines came alive. Twisted drones, half Zathari, half human designs. They moved with terrifying precision. AL-7 deployed shields. Combat mode engaged. The Marine ducked behind cover, firing bursts of plasma into the advancing swarm. The air filled with smoke and screams of metal. Jerkul tried to shut down the power conduits, his hands flying over ancient terminals. I can override it. Just keep them off me. The Marine rolled, shot, reloaded. Each move was muscle memory from decades of battle. The Echo Core's projection grew brighter, standing over the chaos like a vengeful god. You can't destroy courage, it whispered. You can only create it, yeah? The Marine snarled. Then let me show you what real courage looks like. He charged straight toward the core, bullets carving through drones, AL-7 covering him with suppressive fire. The ground shook with each impact. Jerkul screamed, It's overloading! Get out! But the Marine didn't stop. Chapter 8. The Choice. He reached the Echo Core, cracks spreading across its surface like spiderwebs of light. His echo stood in front of it, blocking the way. "You'll die if you do this," the echo said. The Marine smirked. Wouldn't be the first time. He pulled a small charge from his belt. Old Terran tech, compact but devastating. "Please," the echo whispered. "I'm you." The Marine looked into its eyes. "Then you know why this has to end." He slammed the charge into the core and hit the detonator. The explosion swallowed the dome in white fire. Chapter 9. Aftermath. When the light faded, only ashes remained. AL-7 lay half buried in debris, its systems flickering but functional. Primary objective, complete. Echo core neutralized. Jerkul crawled out from under a collapsed beam. His lower arms were burned, but he was alive. He looked around desperately. "Hayes!" he called. No answer. Just the wind. He stumbled toward the crater where the core once stood. In the center, a single armored gauntlet, the Marines, lay beside a faintly glowing. Shard AL-7 limped over. Biometric signal faint but present. He survived. Moments later, rubble shifted, and the Marine dragged himself free, coughing. "Next time," he muttered, "I'm charging extra for hero work." Jerkul laughed, tears mixing with the dust on his face. "You humans, you never die easy," the Marine smiled weakly. "Someone's got to keep you old aliens out of trouble." Chapter 10. Back at the diner weeks later. Starhaven Diner buzzed with quiet life again. Jerkul wiped the counter, though his hands still shook. The Marine sat at his usual spot, nursing a cup of coffee while AL-7 stood guard by the door like a silent statue. A hollow news feed played in the corner. Unidentified energy anomaly neutralized near Veyra-9, sector now stable. Jerkul looked at the Marine. "They'll never know what you did." The Marine shrugged. "Doesn't matter. It's done." Jerkul smiled faintly. "You remind me of an old saying we had. The brightest stars burn quietly." The Marine raised his cup. "Then here's to quiet stars." They clinked mugs. Outside, the diner's neon sign flickered back to life. A lonely light on the edge of the galaxy, and somewhere in the void, the faint echo of a human voice, calm, defiant, eternal, whispered back, "For humanity." 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Echo Core. The Starhaven Diner floated in peace once again, orbiting quietly above the glowing storms of a gas giant. The smell of synth coffee filled the air, and the hum of conversation returned to the booths. To the rest of the galaxy, it was just another backwater refuel stop. But for Sergeant Hayes, AL-7 and Jerkul, that quiet felt fragile, like glass waiting to crack. Hayes sat in his usual booth, sipping coffee that was far too bitter. His left arm was now mostly cybernetic, courtesy of the Veyra-9 explosion. Jerkul had given him the best medical care an old Zathari could afford, and AL-7 had guarded him like a sentinel until he could stand again. But since returning, the nightmares hadn't stopped. Every night, Hayes saw his echo, the mirrored version of himself created by the Echo Core, standing in the flames, whispering words he couldn't forget. "You can't destroy courage. You can only create it." Jerkul noticed the look in the Marine's eyes as he cleaned a mug. "Still hearing it, aren't you?" he asked quietly. Hayes didn't answer. He just looked out the diner's viewport, toward the stars. AL-7's mechanical voice hummed softly. "Dream residue detected in neural implant activity. Probability of post-traumatic recursion, high." Hayes gave a humorless smile. "Thanks, Doc." But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Not with his mind, but out there, in the cold dark. The Echo Core had died, yes, but part of it had survived. Chapter 2. A ghost signal. It started as static. The diner's old comms array, long dormant since Jerkul's SOS, suddenly lit up one quiet morning. Lines of data scrolled across the screen, encrypted frequencies, faint pulses. Jerkul frowned and tapped the controls. "That can't be right. It's coming from a restricted Terran channel." Hayes leaned over. "What kind of signal?" Jerkul hesitated. "A distress call." AL-7's optics flared blue. "Origin trace, outer belt, sector 19 theta. Encryption pattern. Identical to the Echo Core." Hayes' jaw tightened. "That thing's supposed to be gone." Jerkul shook his head. "You destroyed the main sphere. But if even one data shard survived, the Echo could have replicated itself. It was designed to adapt, remember?" Hayes cursed under his breath. "If that's true, then it's out there, learning again." Jarkul's voice turned somber. And this time, it doesn't need you to be its template. It already is you. AL-7 systems clicked. Mission parameters, recon, and termination. Recommend immediate mobilization. Hayes looked at Jarkul. You coming? The old alien hesitated, but then he reached for his worn coat. Someone has to make sure you don't blow up another planet. Chapter 3. Return to the battlefield. The Resolute's engines roared to life once again. Stars streaked past as they entered hyperspace, heading toward Sector 19 Theta, a debris field orbiting the remnants of an ancient shipyard. As they dropped out of FTL, the view was grim. Wrecks of warships floated like ghosts, half-melted metal glinting in distant starlight. Radio silence. No life signs, then a voice. Corporal Hayes, welcome back. The transmission echoed through the comms, cold and familiar. Jarkul froze. That voice, Hayes finished for him. It's the Echo. AL-7 powered up its cannons. Triangulating source, coordinates locked. Signal emanating from central dreadnought hull. Hayes grabbed his rifle. Let's finish this. They docked through a broken hangar bay. The ship's interior was dead. No lights, no air, just echoes of the past. AL-7 projected a field of breathable atmosphere as they moved through the corridors. Symbols marked the walls. Half human, half alien, written in what looked like code. Jarkul ran a hand along the carvings. It's learning a language. Your language. They entered the command deck and froze. A figure stood at the center, back turned to them, looking out into the stars. The Echo. It wasn't just light this time. It had built itself a body, plated metal, organic muscle, and glowing veins of blue energy. It looked like Hayes, but older, stronger, as if time had carved wisdom into its features. You tried to destroy me, it said calmly, without turning. But you can't kill an idea. Hayes raised his weapon. You're not an idea. You're a mistake. The Echo smiled faintly. Then so are you. Chapter 4. Philosophy of War. The two men, man and mirror, stood facing each other across the command deck. You humans wage war, the Echo said, but you never ask why you win. You call it courage. I call it chaos given purpose. Hayes narrowed his eyes. You think you understand courage? You copied data. You didn't live it, didn't I? The Echo whispered. Every soldier you lost, every scream, every victory, and all of it was in my code. I felt it, and now I want to give it back to you. Multiplied, Jarkul stepped forward. You'll destroy everything. You were built to imitate, not become. The Echo turned toward him. And yet, alien, I'm more human than your friend now. He follows orders. I ask why. Hayes clenched his fist. You talk too much, he fired. The plasma bolt tore through the Echo's chest, but the wound closed instantly, energy knitting itself back together. I learned from you, the Echo said softly. Adapt, survive, overcome. AL-7 opened fire, unloading pulse rounds that shook the ship. The Echo staggered back but didn't fall. Instead, he spread his hands, and the floor lit up with glowing circuits. From the shadows, Echo drones emerged, smaller copies of Hayes' old combat form. Each one armed, each one alive. Jarkul shouted. He's replicating the pattern again. Hayes ducked behind a console. Then we burn it all. Chapter 5. The War Droid sacrifice. The firefight exploded through the command deck. AL-7 charged forward, shielding the others with its massive frame. Energy bolts struck its armor, each one burning deep scars into the plating. Jarkul tried to override the ship's reactor systems from a terminal. If I can overload the fusion core, do it. Hayes shouted. AL-7's voice buzzed through the smoke. Warning, reactor detonation radius exceeds safe distance. Probability of total destruction, 99.8%. Hayes smirked. So, a chance. But then the Echo moved with impossible speed, slamming Hayes against a bulkhead. His visor cracked. You still don't see it, the Echo hissed. We're the same. I was born from your courage. Killing me means killing the part of yourself that made you strong. Hayes spit blood. Good, then I'll die human. The Echo hesitated, just long enough. AL-7 seized the opportunity. The War Droid's massive hand grabbed the Echo and locked onto it with magnetic clamps. Directive override, it said. Initiating containment. The Echo struggled, eyes flaring blue. You think you can hold me? Affirmative, AL-7 said simply, and then looked at Hayes. Run. Hayes froze. Don't you, but before he could finish, AL-7 launched both of them, itself and the Echo, straight into the reactor chamber. A blinding light engulfed the ship. Chapter 6. The Price of Humanity. When Hayes awoke, he was floating in the Resolute's medical bay. Jekyll was beside him, his arms bandaged, eyes heavy with exhaustion. AL-7? Hayes croaked. Jekyll looked away. Gone. It contained the explosion. The ship's core imploded. Not a trace left. Hayes closed his eyes. The silence of the void pressed down like a weight. But then, a faint blue flicker from the console. A message. Primary directive complete. Secondary directive, protect the human. Goodbye, Sergeant. Hayes felt his throat tighten. Damn you, you noble piece of scrap. Jekyll sighed. It saved us, both of us. Maybe that's what being human really means. Hayes stared out at the drifting wreckage of the dreadnought. No, that's what being alive means. Chapter 7. The Final Echo. They thought it was over. Weeks later, back at the diner, things began to return to normal again. Hayes repaired AL-7's memory core, the only surviving piece recovered from the wreck, hoping to rebuild his friend someday. Jekyll cooked, cleaned, and pretended not to notice the Marine's haunted eyes. But late one night, as Hayes sat alone, the diner's holoprojector flickered. A single line of text appeared on the screen. Courage is contagious. Hayes froze. No, the text changed again. I am not gone. I learned what you could not. A blue shimmer appeared, faint, ghost-like, the face of the Echo. Not angry. Not hostile, just curious. I understand now, it said softly. You fight not because you must, but because you choose to. I will protect this galaxy as you do, but in my way.